Third time's the charm. Third time. So this is the magic mic that we will use for the Zoom, and we'll try and keep those two were a little off. Yeah. So this one is good. And this is the world we live in now, right? The hybrid world where we're doing things in multiple dimensions. And I appreciate your flexibility as we work through this. And thanks to the virtual audience for letting our technology check delay us just a second. All right. As I mentioned, if you didn't hear me online, thank you for joining the Public Sector Workforce Forum with a spotlight on Greater Sacramento. Next slide shows that I am Erica Manuel. I am the CEO and Executive Director of the Institute for Local Government. We're based here in Sacramento, but we are a statewide nonprofit organization focused on the public sector, specifically local governments that are cities, counties, and special districts. And I'm going to be kind of co-moderating today with my colleague, Melissa Keene, who you'll see in just a second. Couple quick things on the tech overview. If you are online, please stay on mute. Please feel free to type any questions in the chat box. Make sure your screen name is up to date, and feel free to raise your hand at any time or use a reactions icon on if you like what you are seeing or hearing, or if you have some kind of motion that you want to show. We'd love to see those things. We want to interact with the online audience as much as the virtual one and the in-person one. So definitely please connect with us in whatever way you can. For the in-person folks, a couple quick things housekeeping wise. The restrooms are out this door. First, make a left and then make a right, and then the restrooms are right there. This is going to go straight through till 3 o'clock. So go ahead and use your own personal discretion. When you need to get up, feel free. If you need to grab a refreshment, feel free. We've got a lot of really great presentations, and we want to make sure that you hear them, but we know that you're adults and you can handle that. So please, if you wouldn't mind, make sure your cell phones are turned off or on vibrate. And if you need to take a call, do it outside, just out of the courtesy of the group. But other than that, do know that we are going to ask you to use your cell phones today. We're going to use that for some virtual polling exercises. So keep it with you. Just turn it off and make sure it's not making a lot of sounds. Thank you. Next slide. So what we're doing today, this is our agenda. We are going to set the stage after these introductions with some statewide and regional data on the labor and workforce market. And then we're going to go into presentations around some initiatives that are in progress and in development, both statewide and in the public sector in the Sacramento region. And our intention today is to give you a snapshot of some of the things that are happening in Sacramento, but also things that you might be able to replicate statewide. If you are not in the region and you're online and you want to know how you might be able to do something like what we're doing here, these are some things that you can scale, things you can replicate, things you can ask about, and maybe even things you can participate in regardless of where you are. We're going to try and make some time for a group discussion so that there's alignment and there's collaboration. And then we're going to make sure you know how to stay connected to this work, how to stay connected to the people that are presenting and the projects that are in the works. And then we'll wrap up by 3 o'clock. So thanks again for being here. Next slide. So our goals for today are really about connecting, about collaborating, and about making sure that the initiatives that we have in the public sector, and specifically around state and local government public sector workforce, are connected. And so we want you to share updates. We want to share some updates with you. We want you to connect with others doing this really important work, but we want to focus on this collaboration, alignment, and scaling. And we really do want to invite you to join and participate in the Innovative Pathways to Public Service Collaborative. If you're in Sacramento, we would love to have you join us in person and virtually. If you're not in Sacramento, connect with ILG. IPPS is definitely connected statewide, and we'd love to keep you on that list. Next slide. So we are so grateful to have a host today that is the Sac State downtown campus. And this is the second time I've been here, but the first time since COVID. And I just have to thank a couple of people, and then we're going to bring our venue sponsor up. We have been a venue co-hosted by the College of Social Sciences and Interdisciplinary Studies, and specifically the Dean, Diane Heisen, who is phenomenal and has really been gracious in allowing us to be here in this space. And we also have support across the entire Sac State network. And we're really grateful to have Rita Gallardo here to just give us a quick venue welcome. Come on up, Rita.
Good morning. My name is Rita Gallardo Good, and I serve as this Senior Associate Vice President for the Office of Public Affairs and Advocacy. On behalf of President Luke Wood, we are so honored to have you here at our downtown campus. This really is a full circle moment for me. I was sharing with Erica before we got started that I have been near and dear to the work that the League of California Cities does and her institute. I have worked in local government for over 35 years and now in state government and working with the CSUs. And so to have you here today is very special. This venue here, it really is about how Sacramento State can ensure that they are connecting with the community and the constituents that we serve. We are here to be a partner to our local and nonprofit and community leaders, but also with our state partners and federal partners. Therefore, we are here with open arms to welcome in any of our constituents or stakeholders that need support. Within this building, we have our public policy courses that are taught, which are well known. The Center for California Studies has their fellowship program, and it's headquartered out of this building. And then we also have the Institute for Social Research on the third floor. We are here as a community member to let you know that we are here in the event that you need any subject matter expertise or any academic programming. Also, our students. We're very pleased to know that our students are the future of workforce development in California. And so the work that you're doing is very important. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Rita. And thank you to the entire Sac State team. They've been amazing. And the downtown campus is just absolutely phenomenal. So thank you all so much. So we are going to do some instant polling to kick us off and to get everyone moving. And this is something that the virtual audience and the in-person audience can do. And I'm going to turn it over to my co-moderator.
Thanks, Erica. As Erica mentioned, I'm Melissa Keene. I'm a senior program manager at the Institute for Local Government, and we'll be co-moderating with Erica today. So bear with us. We're getting some things just worked out on the tech side. But if you're in the room or online, please either scan that QR code or go to menti.com and enter the code you see on the screen, or we'll see in just a second. There we go. There's never a dull moment with hybrid meetings. So you should be able to connect. It looked like some folks were already responding, so I think we've got a few people connected. If you're having trouble, my colleague Hannah can help, so just raise your hand. We can help get you connected. We'll give this just a second. Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. Of course. Is anybody in the room having trouble? Can we help? Oh, you guys are all pros. Okay. Everybody knows QR codes these days, right? Okay. Maybe we could drop it in the chat or something, just the link and the code. So this first question, obviously not related to what we're doing here today, just to get you familiar with the software. How many caffeine addicts do we have in the room? So just, I see some hands. Yes, I'm with you. So how many cups of coffee have you had today? You should be able to select an answer, and then we'll see the responses come up on the screen as you do that. So this first set of questions, we're just kind of trying to figure out who's in the room, both with us in person and oh. Okay. All right. Well, so we're gonna jump around here a little bit. So we have a couple of just questions again to orient us to who's in the room, who's joining us today, both virtually and in person. So the first question you see up is, what is your role? So it looks like a number of you have already answered. We've got a few executive leadership, quite a few HR folks in the room, some policymakers, department heads, and then a lot of others. So we'll see that shift around here as people answer. What type of other staff do we have in the room? Are you staff of local agencies? Anybody work for a city or a county? Couple. How about a school district? Higher ed? Okay, perfect. Are we able to go back to the? Yes. Well, now we get to ask about coffee, which is really the important question. we can skip that one if you want, since that's really just to get people used to it. And it seems like people are having an okay time using the software. I am always amazed at the number of people who don't drink coffee. I can't function without it personally. So, okay. Perfect. Okay. That one's winning. Lots of non-coffee drinkers in the room. So the good news is we have lemonade and tea and water for you back there as well. Okay. I think we can go to the next one. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what type of organization do you work for? City or county? Any special district folks, state folks in the room? Lots of local agencies. That's great. Handful of special districts and state folks, nonprofits. Perfect. Okay. And I think we've already got the next one done, right? Unless anybody still needs to answer. Perfect. So this just gives us a sense of, you know, who we're talking to, what types of programs you might be interested in, and how you might be able to connect with us moving forward. So appreciate you bearing with us through the tech challenges. I think we've got it done now, and we'll be coming back to this software a little bit later. So now that we've got the kinks worked out, we should be smooth sailing from here on out. So I'm going to turn it back over to Erica to get us kicked off.
Thank you, Melissa. And I just want to thank our Valley Vision team for their support. So the Innovative Pathways to Public Service is hosting this event. We are a big part of the kind of regional workforce ecosystem for the public sector. And there are a number of founding members, including the Institute for Local Government, Valley Vision, SETA, and others. And so we're so grateful to their support for this activity. And you'll learn about that in just a moment. So I wanted to do a little bit of setting the stage to make sure there's clarity on why this conversation is important, and certainly why we might be kind of moving in the direction that we're moving as we look at how we can make some systems change in the public sector workforce, and specifically around recruitment and attraction and retention. So a couple things on the labor market considerations as we think about what's happening, not only in Sacramento, but across the country. The pandemic has really accelerated some of the trends that were already in motion. We cannot assume that things will return back to normal, whatever normal was, right? And so we've seen things like a labor and skills shortage. We're seeing a job market that's kind of volatile. There were a lot of times when there were so many job postings out there, and then there were no people to fill them. Now it's changing a little bit, but that doesn't change the fact that there's rising inflation, and the salaries aren't necessarily meeting pace with inflation. And then we've just got increasing regulation on the public sector side. So some of the things that we've always had, like the great benefits and the retirement, some of those things are being regulated differently, and it's changing the ability for public sector to compete with private sector, others in the private sector. Next. We also see there's a lot of work with the union momentum, there's hard insurance, and then these expectations around what employees want in their workplace, what kinds of not only workplace culture, but workplace benefits can be given. And then there's still an ongoing and pervasive COVID-19 health and safety impact. And so thinking about things like those bottom two buckets, particularly things like tied to whether you're remote work or whether you're not, whether you're doing in-person events or not, those things are all playing a role in people's activities and whether or not they're willing to not only come into the office, but whether they're willing to work at a full scale, whether they're requiring support for their families or others, and just thinking about the whole employee as opposed to the individual. A lot of public sector issues, some of these are going to be pre-COVID, but they're certainly going to impact employers on the public sector level. There's issues with minimum qualifications and education restrictions in our job classifications. There's pension costs. We've always been known as being kind of slow to adopt and implement change. The competitive wages, which always included that total compensation package idea, that's not always the way you can sell it, right? When you're competing with the private sector. And so those recruitment and retention programs are a little challenging, especially for people that have been in the public sector for a long time, and they're not seeing their wage growth increase as quickly as they could get it in the private sector. And then housing and the cost of housing, particularly those in high labor housing markets. If your salary isn't kind of increasing with the inflation, with home prices, with rents, and the availability of that, it's very, very complicated. Next slide. A couple of years ago in 2019, IPPS did a public sector jobs kind of needs assessment, and we've included some copies on the table in the back. These are some of the stats, and I won't go through them specifically, but just know that The Sacramento region in particular is very, very heavy in public sector jobs in comparison to California. And so we think about how 24% in 2017 and to 2019, 24% of all the jobs in this region were public sector between state, federal, and local. And so that's a lot of people. That's a lot of economic development. That's a lot of mobility. That's a lot of opportunity to consider. Next slide. And then you can see some county data and regional data specifically for our spotlight region. Next slide. And this is just a slide showing some of the industry sectors in this region that are very, very kind of comparatively which ones have the share of public sector jobs in the region. And this is again, as of the 2019 report. Next slide. So that's the baseline for us. And then we want to talk briefly about IPPS before we go into our presentations, because we are kind of trying to ensure that there is collaboration across these efforts and across the goals that we want for the public sector. And I'm going to invite our co-founding member, Jeff Mrozek, who's with Mrozek Global, also an IPPS member, to talk about IPPS. And then we'll turn it over to the presentations.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Mrozek, and I'm happy to present a little bit about the Innovative Pathways to Public Service. I think we're in year 4 or 5 now from inception. I just want to do a little plug. I'm also the president of the American Society of Public Administration, ASPA Sacramento. So my team's here if you guys want to raise your hand. We got Richard and Zach. If you want to learn more about ASPA, we support excellence in public service, and we through a couple events each year. One is an awards ceremony to recognize folks for excellence in public service. So if you have someone in mind that you'd like to recognize, we'd like to hear about it. So going forward, Innovative Pathways to Public Service is a collaboration model. It was built using collective impact methodology. And basically its role is to convene and facilitate and provide some visions and discussions around what pathways should be developed and how we should meet the needs of the workforce gaps in our public sector, especially in Sacramento region, which is 6 counties. So we partner basically with our government agencies who are vast. There's over 50 organizations that participate with IPPS, as well as our education and workforce partners and higher education, community college, K-12. And we try to develop career pathways and interventions that help people get the degrees, skills, and certifications that they need to be able to get the jobs that are available in our region. And so it's fundamentally about partnerships and building a public sector workforce that's strong and vibrant. Here you'll see our mission, vision, and our why. So again, our mission: align efforts to create a more intentional, effective pathway into public service. And we really want to be a bridge. We want to be able to speak the language of workforce and the needs of government in terms of their classifications and how they operate, as well as being able to communicate to our higher education partners and speak education speak and be able to translate between those two needs and be able to make sure that we're attracting and developing and retaining talent for Sacramento region. And our why is we believe that it's existential, right? There's obviously a need to have good public service, and to do that we need good talent. And so we focus on developing new and existing talent, creating either laterals or verticals into the public sector. We try to raise awareness, like events like today, where we bring data and workforce evidence to you to make the claim for why we need to continue this work and keep it as a priority. And also to seek about creating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce so that folks, when they do arrive, feel like they belong, feel like they can contribute, and that we actually have the most effective solutions through the thinking of diverse perspectives. So that's the why. And here's a few screenshots of our diverse agencies and shared focus. Anybody here that's not on that list? Anyone in the room not have their logo represented here? And Sierra College. Okay, thank you for being here, Amy. Rockland Unified School District? City of Rockland, okay, thank you. And then in the back I saw. Okay, wonderful. We'd like to learn more about you. And your hand? Sacramento City School District. Okay, so we obviously, yes, more. City of West Sacramento, hooray, yes, Zach. Okay, CDSS. Okay, wonderful, excellent, yes. So please do make relationships and connections. This is only a representation of those agencies who we have worked with in the past, but we want to continue to work with everybody, and especially since the workforce is vast in public service here in Sacramento. I think there's one more slide. I think there's a little QR code here. If you want to scan that, you can join us at the October 23rd meeting, which is our next general meeting, and learn more and get involved. We have a couple different priorities and verticals that we work on. And so to the extent that you have an interest in supporting public service readiness, we welcome you. That's all. So I'll hand it back to Erica.
So we're going to invite our first set of panelists up to the table, and Melissa's going to moderate.
Do we want to do a quick mic check and see if either of those work for the panelists, please?
I'm checking this microphone. This one works. Amazing.
Thank you.
Checking this one as well.
Okay.
I see things pop up.
Yes.
A joke.
I've got a thumbs
No
up in the
joke right now.
background. I think we're good. I think we're good. Thank you. Again, thank you for bearing with us in this hybrid world. We appreciate your patience. So we're gonna jump into some fantastic presentations from some projects that are in development and in progress, both here in the region as well as statewide. So if you want to go to the next slide, these are the organizations that we'll be hearing from over the next hour or so. A number of different projects that involve different types of workforce development initiatives. So we're going to dig into them a little bit. Our first set of panelists here is going to be focused on statewide initiatives. So that doesn't mean you can't plug into them, even if you're here locally. So there's going to be a regional component and a regional ability for you to join in. There's going to be some calls to actions and ways that you can join into these efforts. But this initial set of conversations is going to be focused on a statewide perspective. So I'm going to kick it over to Evan Schmidt, who is the Executive Director of Valley Vision, who, again, thank you to our partnership today, is able to bring this event to you.
Hello? Oh, there it is. All right. Well, thanks for having me. Thank you very much. And I'm very pleased to be here with you all today and talking about the Community Economic Resilience Fund, a major effort going on statewide as well as in our capital region. And let's see. My name is Evan Schmidt, and I'm the CEO of Valley Vision. For anyone who's not familiar with Valley Vision, we're a nonprofit here in Sacramento. We strive to create livability in communities across the region, and we do that by advancing social equity, economic prosperity, and environmental sustainability. So we work across a really broad set of topics and areas in this region. Really pleased to have so many Valley Vision staff here and the support of everyone in putting this event together. It's right behind me. I have to guess what's behind me. Oh, all right. So like I said, I'm going to be talking about the Community Economic Resilience Fund, that's otherwise known as SURF, which is a fun little acronym. SURF is a new statewide program, and it's designed to advance sustainable, inclusive economic development that's led by regions across the state of California. For the state, it's a rather new way of doing economic development. And there's a recognition, first of all, that every region has a really unique environment in which they're advancing economic priorities. Second one, in acknowledging the historical exclusion of many in our communities. And so really being focused on disinvested communities, that's part of the language of the program, but really those who have been excluded in the past and who have typically been left out of economic development processes, as well as left out of the benefit of those projects. And it's also centered on low carbon economies. So in California, as we think about how are we moving in alignment with the policies that are being put forward to a lower carbon economy, what do we need to do in our communities to make sure that's successful? So in order to activate SURF in regions across the state, they've designated 13 different regions. Ours is the capital region. It's an 8-county region, which you can see behind me. And for each of those regions, they've designated a regional convener, or that's really the backbone hub that's intended to lead the work in each region. For the capital region, that entity is Valley Vision. And we're really excited and honored to be in this role to be advancing the work on a regional scale. So the main goals that we really want to create jobs, to create access to jobs, and to bring new investments into our region. And that's kind of the big picture goal of this program in our region. And we have a few different assignments over the next year. And this is, we're in the planning phase. So our region has $5 million in order to do these assignments and to get this work kicked off. So for Valley Vision as the regional convener, there's a few key things that we're doing, and this work is underway right now. But one is we're creating a collaborative. So we're not doing this work alone. The idea of being focused on inclusion and focused on equity around our disinvested communities, we have to have a really broad-based coalition of folks working on that. And we also have an 8-county region, which is a really broad region with a lot of different economic interests and economic climates across it. So we have a group of more than 130 organizations that have signed on and committed to be a part of the collaborative. And we're also kicking up a lot of efforts in kind of more local locations around our 8 counties in order to surface priorities and in order to kind of be a part of this collaborative. Part of it also is creating a decision-making body that can move things forward. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Our other assignment is to produce a regional roadmap for economic development. And so over the next year, that's what we're really working on. And in order to do that, we are helping bring about community engagement. We are bringing research into the picture. We're working with local communities to surface economic priorities. And we're working on knitting, or we will be working on knitting this together into a large scale regional prioritization. The idea is that these economic priorities are surfaced. There's an opportunity through the SURF program to develop some of those projects further. And then there's also an opportunity for implementation through the SURF program. And so to give you a sense of what that means for our region, I mentioned our planning phase is a $5 million endeavor over the next year. The next phase in the SURF program is called the Catalyst program. And that's really designed to develop the high priority projects that we identify. And then finally, the state is leading the implementation phase. And sorry, to back up to the Catalyst program, that's up to $14 million per region in order to do that. And then the implementation phase is a statewide level activity. And the state has about $268 million to put into funding projects that are kind of shovel ready to move forward. So it's a pretty large scale project for the state, but the idea too is to leverage what we can create through the SURF program for other funding streams and other momentum for other activities as well. So if we're successful, it's not just about the SURF program, it's really about how can we coalesce a vision for our region and then really advance the items that we all identify together as the important components of an inclusive economy here in our capital region. I wanted to tie together the work of SURF specifically with the public sector. And one note that I will make, there's a stated emphasis in this statewide program for tradable clusters or tradable sectors. So one of the things they really want us to do is focus on those sectors that are attached to our national or global economy and that are bringing money in from outside the region or putting products out from inside the region. So that is a major emphasis, and our public sectors are typically not thought of as tradable clusters. But I do think as we think about this process of building high priority projects, really leaning into equity-centered workforce strategies, facing our economy towards the future in terms of both low carbon and our skill base, I think there's a lot of really important tie-ins to the public sector and a lot of mutual benefit that can happen, even if we're focused more primarily on tradable clusters. One of the activities that's going on right now is a lot of research, and we're working with our partners at the Brookings Institution to help us do the research. And some of you might be aware that they came into an economic assessment for our region like 5 years ago. So that was really helpful for us as a region to think about where's some of our economic disparities, where's our challenges, where's our opportunities. So they're kind of diving back into that work and helping us activate some of the things we need to as part of the SURF program. The slide that you're looking at now is really about how to start thinking about prioritization and our regional opportunities. And I wanted to just give you a glimpse of some of the considerations that we're keeping in mind as we move this work forward. And a lot of you are probably already familiar with these, but you know, just to talk a little bit about how we're identifying the kind of parameters that we're operating in. That's kind of the first part, and that's the top of the funnel here. And that's thinking about what are our economic opportunities within our traded sectors. In particular, what are some of our market demand trends? Where are we competitive on a global scale? What's the policy environment like? So what's possible within that policy environment? What are some of our innovation capabilities? And then as you move down this funnel, you're also looking at job quality and opportunity. So how do we focus on the jobs that matter most? And for us, that's kind of really thinking about kind of the quote, good jobs or promising jobs. So those that have the potential for upward mobility, those that pay a livable wage, those that offer benefits, et cetera. And then finally getting down to community preferences. And this is a really important part. And just because it's at the bottom of the funnel doesn't mean that it's not really important. It's one of those filters that we put through as we think about what are the opportunities that we really want to leverage and advance. And I'm running out of time. So this one of these last slides is an example of what is to come. And I thought this was really relevant for this group, and it might be small for you to read. I know it is for me on my paper. And this does not reflect real data for our region. This is research that is still yet to come for us, but it identifies a number of sectors, both traded and local serving. So our public sectors are in there. And in the blue, I think it's in the blue where we have what's defined as good jobs at different skill levels. And in the green, we have the promising jobs. And so the idea here is to show us kind of where's the potential across these sectors for good and promising jobs, and then to dive in and really be able to define those more clearly. And some of our, what we've seen, utilities in particular, actually is one of our fastest growing clusters right now. And there's a lot of, and then our public sector is performing really strong. So I think one question that I would leave you with is how can we leverage this development work that we're doing through SURF and really apply it to the public sector? And that might be an activity that is running next to SURF. It might not be within the heart of the program, but I think there's a lot of potential there. And it's a really important part of the activities because our public sector, as you all know, even better than I do, is an incredibly important part of our economy. And we really want to be thinking about how are we developing the skills to support those jobs. And then finally, just to talk a little bit about next steps, we're continuing to advance research to identify targets around wage and priority sectors. We are working on community engagement. We've actually brought in a bunch of funded partners at the local level to help us do that. We're working on that decision-making body. So we're seating a leadership council, and that's a group of up to 36 folks who are going to help us make decisions. And those nominations are actually still open right now. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can talk to any of our staff or go to our website. It's all up there. And then we're working on this project and initiative pipeline. So that work's still to come, but really identifying what are the core projects. We have a big event coming up next month. That's the Livability Summit on October 30th. It's Valley Vision's annual event. It's really kind of a wellness check for our region, but we're going to be focused on inclusive economic growth as part of that event because it's such an important topic for us right now. And that wraps up my comments. Here's our contact information. I unfortunately have to run here in just a few minutes, but Renee John is here to answer any follow-up questions, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evan. Looking forward to hearing more and continuing to work with you all. In the interest of time, I am going to pause on questions just to make sure we get through all of the presentations, and then we will definitely have time built in for questions, hopefully after this set of panelists, but definitely towards the end of the summit. So we will get to them, as many of them as we can, I promise. I do want to move on. Next up, we're going to hear from Lanaya Trejo, who is the statewide career strategy manager with Cal HR.
Thank you. All right. So thank you so much for having me. My name is Linnea, and I have been with the state approximately 9 years, but I have over 27 years in the workforce environment. all over from education to the federal environment. I have a gamut of experience. So I consider myself a workforce champion. So thank you for inviting the state of California here to hear all of the good things that you guys are doing. Many of you may not know, but CalHR is only 11 years new. It is a new state department. Brown's reorg consolidated 2 personnel departments. CalHR is responsible for all issues relating to employee salaries, benefits, job classifications, civil rights, training, exams, recruitment, and retention. And for most employees, many of these matters determined through the collective bargain process managed by CalHR. All right. You can go one more back for me. Let's see. Right, that sounds good. California is working to remove barriers to state employment. This is something that I'm sure a lot of people have heard of the paper ceiling that's going on right now. We recently just received an executive order from Governor Newsom on August 31st. And it directs CalHR to evaluate whether a college degree is needed for particular positions whenever a classification is reviewed. So at our department, we review classifications to ensure that, 1, that they're up to industry needs, and 2, that they're meeting the needs of the public. Our outreach and education efforts position us as employer of choice. We are the largest employer in the state of California. So it's important that we increase our awareness about different paths towards state employment. The campaign is going to walk applicants at all levels through abilities through the state application and hiring process, as well as hiring events, such as our October 3rd No Degree Required fair with our partner SETA. And I know SETA is here, so thank you for that. So far, we have about 1,400 registrations and 40 state departments that are participating. And my goal in a lot of these different fairs is to ensure that when the public shows up, they know where they're going to fit in. As you know, there's millions of classifications, and it's not as easy to figure out where you fit in. So clustering these industries and or skill sets helps the individuals understand where they're going to be going. Not too long ago, we were really successful. We did an admin career event. We did an IT career event. And so helping the departments understand that if we work together, we can actually bring in the talent that we need and have a better focus instead of all of us doing the same thing over and over again. Let's see, barriers. Just as you guys know, in 2018, we eliminated the check the box for screening applicants. I also sit on Prison to Employment. It's an effort by Governor Newsom Cal Leads, and it's helping individuals while they're still in prison transition into state services. We actually go there and help them and work with state departments. So it's a seamless service when they leave prison into jobs. So that's there's all these initiatives that we do on a regular basis, and I'm lucky to be a part of that. As you guys know or may not know, 75% of new jobs require a bachelor degrees, but only 40% of the workers have one. So reevaluating what we are asking for in the workforce is extremely detrimental to our individuals. Most people get their skills through community college courses, military service, on-the-job training, or certification programs. Again, it's called STARS, Skilled Through Alternative Routes, something that I am working really hard to help our state departments understand. We need to reevaluate all of these. So far, to date, CalHR has removed barriers from 169 job classifications. And recently, we just made that change with our large staff services analyst classification, removing the degree and requiring a 12th grade education. So as you can see, there is a lot of things going on at CalHR. There always is. We have about 250 staff that serves 300 state departments. Myself, I am one at one. So you're looking at me. I manage myself in all these different programs. So collaboratively and reaching out and creating contact with people is so important. And I know on the next, or it might have been the other one, creating a community of practice. So part of my role is supporting statewide recruiters all over state of California, understanding what I was charged with and the resources that I have, which a lot of you have pretty much the same resources. I was tasked to give resources to individuals. When I first started at CalHR, we didn't even have recruitment in states. It was other duties as assigned, and it usually was somebody sitting at a desk just putting post and pray, I'm sure. And hopefully somebody applies, but it's changed. So a lot of our state departments actually have recruiters for the state departments. Right now, the state of California sits at a 20% vacancy rate. That is pretty high for us. Being that we are the largest employer in the state, we have to do things differently, more creatively, looking at our resources, looking at how we're going to spend our budgets, our dollars, our time. One of the projects that I did was creating a state recruiters roundtable. Right now, we have about 300 to 500 participants. It's a bi-monthly meeting. And we talk about a lot of different things in a community of practice. I am not the, how can I say, authority. I don't have any authority to tell people what to do. However, we work as a team, and it's pretty amazing, in my opinion, that people from all over state departments can gather together and decide what we need to be focusing on, or where are some areas that we need to strengthen. I also had created a Teams channel. We have over 1,800 people on the Teams channel so that we can share best practices, career fairs, what's going on, and some of the other issues. And so just like ILGs at CalHR works to empower state departments to help navigate complex issues, increase their capacity, and build trust in their communities. And I think I spoke enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Linnea. All right, so I'm wearing two hats. I'm wearing a moderator hat and a presenter hat. So forgive me for being on the mic quite a bit, but we have a couple of exciting initiatives to share, and I'm excited to do that. So a couple things related to Earn and Learn with registered apprenticeships. This is a statewide effort, and it's really tied to what you might have heard is the governor's desire and mandate to have 500,000 apprenticeships by 2030. It's a very, very large and lofty goal, and I sit on the Interagency Council for Apprenticeships as the public sector chair. And it's a very, very ambitious project that includes public sector, but also private sector industries by sector. And the difference thing about public sector is that the public sector is a sector of sectors. We've got every category within the workforce that this public sector does, right? So every agency's got communications people and IT people and administrative and HR. So we really have to think differently about how we address some of the challenges we have for recruitment, and our vacancy rates are very high. So we're looking at expanding economic mobility with local government apprenticeships, and we've just been supported through the High Road Training Partnerships grant out of the State Workforce Development Board and also the Irvine Foundation. So the landscape is what you know. There's 1.6 million people working in the public sector, huge diversity between some of the larger local governments, particularly the cities and counties and special districts that are very, very high in terms of the number of staff, the amount of resources they might have from a tax base, versus the very small ones, maybe those ones that are rural or others, right? Big discrepancy between them, but most are facing vacancy rates. Most 70% of them saying that they're struggling to fill recruitments and find the right people and to have a leadership pipeline. And there's an opportunity for us to think creatively, right? And I love some of the stuff that Linnea was talking about thinking differently about the classifications and the qualifications and how we address this to really remove barriers to employment. It's really about access, and it's about diversity, and it's about making sure that people have economic mobility. And as you could see from the slide that Evan showed, there is a lot of high growth opportunity in the public sector. And sometimes it's a sector that's kind of overlooked. It's not always considered sexy. And so we've got to think differently about how we not only talk about the public sector, but how we open the doors to the public sector. So ILG is working on an approach that's going to leverage some of the existing resources that are already out there. Apprenticeships are in the works by numerous organizations, private and public. Not as many public, quite honestly. It's a challenging system to build into the public sector structure, but the private sector is getting it done. And so we've been working for the last 18 months to work within the existing networks, to raise some awareness and visibility among some of our local government people, to streamline some of these processes. There's a lot of paperwork and administrative stuff that's required to become a registered apprenticeship. but we think that we can streamline some of that with some of the collaboration that we might have across local agencies. And when you look at like exactly like Linnea has been doing, you know, there is a community of practice where there's consistency of process. Some of the same classifications at the state level for various departments have the same requirements, right? Same thing in the public sector at the local government level. A management analyst in a various city or county might have the same general job description and classification across agencies. How can we use that consistency to simplify and streamline this process? We're going to work on that. And we're going to do it with partners that are willing to help us build trust and strengthen relationships, not just with employers, but also with employees and future employees, so that there's an awareness that we want diversity in the public sector and that there is a place for you, regardless of where maybe you've been in the past and maybe what you thought were the limiting factors based on your education or your workplace attainment. So we're looking at alignment with a lot of key stakeholders. This is about bringing more people to the table, but not so many that we can't get anything done, but just the right amount so we have all the right information. But we know that there are a lot of projects in place and a lot of efforts in works. You heard about the SURF region, right? There are 8 counties in the SURF region. Does that always align with the workforce board regions? Not necessarily, but we're going to figure out how we can overlay some of these important efforts so that all of these stakeholders are in the room and can play a role in the discussion around how we develop a consistent and process for registered apprenticeships across local government. We know that there's going to need to be data. There's going to need to be a marketing and messaging and branding campaign, and there's going to need to be technology and tools to get this done. We know that some of the places where local agencies find a hang up is on figuring out how to do reporting, figuring out how to get people in the system and follow them through the process, figuring out how to scale this. You know, maybe you can get one, but how do you get multiple? And then you've got to manage people. It's a complicated process, but we know with technology, we can do it. There are some pilots we'll be running very soon that include technology tools of various kinds. And we're excited to roll those out. In phase 1, which is going to kick off very soon, if not the end of this year, beginning of next with our HRTP grant, we're going to be building an inventory of the local governments that are already doing this. We're going to highlight some early pilots, some of the projects that have been successful already, so we can learn from what worked and not do the things that didn't work, really help create, like she's done, a community of practice for registered apprenticeships. And then figure out, okay, these are where we're finding roadblocks or speed bumps. There's going to be challenges, but there's also going to be opportunities. How can we highlight those so that we can figure out what needs to be cleared at the state level or the federal level to make this actually viable in the public sector? And we're going to be launching 2 pilots in phase, or 2 to more than, there's a phase 2. We're going to be launching 5 to 10 pilots across the state, hopefully including in Sacramento, where we will be identifying registered apprenticeships in the city, county, or special district level that can work and that can be used across as a model for other local governments. So we hope that you will join us. If you're interested in this, or if you have done this, or if you want to do this, we would love to connect more with you. My contact information is down here. It's also on the table. We welcome the opportunity to connect about this exciting process and this exciting project.
Perfect. Before we jump into our next set of polling, would love to see if there's any questions. We could have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, if there are any. I know there's a lot of information we just threw at you in about 15 minutes. So no, do we have any questions in the virtual room? Okay, well then we'll keep moving. You want to get your cell phones back out. We're going to go back to the instant polling. Hopefully most of you are connected already, and this should be a little bit easier process. So our next set of questions is going to be more focused on some of the workforce challenges that you all might be facing from a recruitment and retention perspective. So we'll go ahead and maybe launch the next one. Perfect. So what are the most critical workforce challenges in your organization? So you can pick your top 3. And if anybody's having trouble reconnecting, Hannah in the back can help you. So just raise your hand. Give this a minute or 2. I know there's a lot, so. Yes, you have to hit submit once you make your selections. Oh, okay. Your top priority then. All right. See a few still coming in, but a lot of votes for the cumbersome hiring and recruitment process. And so that was similar to what Linnea was just sharing in terms of the state process. Local agencies obviously face that same challenge. And so thinking about how can we streamline these processes? How can we remove barriers? Obviously, a lot of you are working through that. Finding qualified employees, qualified applicants, definitely something we've been hearing from a lot of the local agencies we've been working with as well. And sometimes you're just stealing them from the neighboring city or county, right? So how can we increase the pool? How can we find more qualified applicants for all of the vacancies that we see across the state? Quite a few votes for retention of existing staff. So once you have them, how can you keep your neighboring city or county or the state from stealing them from you, right? So what are some of the strategies to be thinking through there in terms of recruitment that isn't maybe just money, or sorry, retention that isn't maybe just increasing salaries? So what are some of those strategies? And then a few votes for lacking a pool of diverse or young applicants. Retirement of current employees. We know that retirement wave is upon us. So how do we backfill some of those more senior or leadership positions, get that next generation ready to lead? And then a couple votes for lacking capacity for professional development. Perfect. Thank you for sharing. I think we can go on to the next one. So in your agency, what are the levels of positions that are most difficult to fill? So we're going to have the same situation where you have to pick one instead of, even though the slide says two. So slight pivot. There's a question? Okay. Okay. See some folks are still voting here, but kind of across the board, but lots of journey level positions that are challenging to fill, less challenges at the entry level and the executive level. So kind of those mid-level folks, right? If you're in a local agency, maybe you're management analysts, or you're up to your department heads, or maybe the hardest to fill, with entry and executive being slightly easier. Thank you. I think we've got one more question. No. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the thoughts and participation. There is a question that came through from our virtual audience. So we'll go ahead and pause and take that really quickly.
Yeah, Bina wants to know, are school districts including the ILG's work for apprenticeships?
There is an entire subset for schools that is not necessarily part of the public sector work that we're doing, though it is included. So it's kind of one of those super sector concepts. There is an entire education subcommittee as part of IACA that is tied to this. So we would say that we'll be sharing the love with the school districts, with the education subcommittee and the public sector subcommittee. It's not part of ILG's specific work just because of our focus on city, county, special districts, but there will be someone working on it. And it's definitely part of the IACA process.
Okay, I'd love to invite our next set of panelists up to the front here. So Lauren, Jose, Joseph, if you could join us up here. While we're doing that, are there any other questions that have come up from the audience, maybe sparked by the polling or by Bina's question? One in the back. Let me run you a microphone real quick.
You have to turn yours around, Jose.
Hi, I actually have like 5 questions, but I'll boil it to one. My name's Sofia Cardenas. I'm here representing the Sacramento Central Labor Council. Please forgive how I'm dressed. I was doing outreach earlier. You just got to look a little more normal out on the street. But my question for all of the panelists that were just up here is sort of what is the role that you see unions and worker-led organizations playing in our regional economic development? So I know that we touched on apprenticeships, would love to connect with you. We have great apprenticeship programs. But then also in SURF, sort of what is the emphasis on workers holistically as, members of their union?
We're going to turn it over to Renee in the back, who's representing Evan, who had to step away, but she's got an answer.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So unions are definitely one of the partner groups for SURF, and we have been in contact with different labor unions who have participated in the process and as part of the collaborative. And we're also about to enter into a contract with a labor liaison for the entire SURF region. So encourage, if you haven't been involved, to connect to the project. And as Evan said earlier, nominations are still open for the Leadership Council. So if there are any representatives from labor who want to nominate someone, or you can nominate yourself, that is also acceptable.
No, I mean, we are already.
Okay. Did I answer your question or did I not?
What is the role? Like I love that labor's being like this.
Mhm.
We did involve, but I'm wondering like what the role is that we see as like a public sector. Sorry, that we see as like a public sector that like labor unions play,
So
right, in
how-
economic development.
Yeah, so the public sector part, I'll let Erica answer, but I will say in terms of inclusive economic development, so the SURF process is all about designing a shared vision for the region for inclusive economic development, ensuring that we all benefit from the strategies that we're putting in place. And so labor is critical to that, as are all of the partner groups, including community members, representatives of our BIPOC populations, employers, and industry. So it will take all of us together to create a shared vision that we can all buy into so that we can advance holistic solutions together.
And I'll just add one more. For the projects that we're working on, we really, really want to work with unions, and some of the specific pieces in the work that I've already outlined and what I will talk about. Worker voice is going to be elevated in a different way than I think it ever has. Certainly with the work that we're doing, we want to continue to advance and support employers, but there does need to be this post-COVID conversation about how the employee voice has to be equally important and has to be built into the discussion about what workplaces look like, how they feel, how they bring people in, and how they keep them. And so I think unions are already having probably their leaps and bounds above some other employers, particularly because they've been connecting with employees directly for decades. And so we want to build those relationships and understand some of the work that's been done so that we're not reinventing the wheel, and so that we really do think differently about who belongs in public sector, who belongs in the cities, the counties, and special districts, certainly that my organization works with. But what the face of local government looks like needs to be different. It needs to be more diverse. It needs to be reflective of the communities. And the unions have been doing that for a long time. So we'd love to partner on that. And you will see worker voice spread throughout our proposals and throughout our effort with an intention around that.
Thank you.
Hear me okay? And I just want to just jump in because with a labor specific question, representing SMUD, again, over 900 of our employees are represented employees. So when we talk about our workforce development, we are working directly. And what Renee is talking about as well is how to make sure that labor is not just at the table, but actively involved in ideating and also identifying those opportunities and then aligning on the training to make sure we're ready for some of these next generation jobs that Erica referenced before. So it's definitely a partnership, and definitely not a situation where we want labor to be at the late stages. We cannot move forward right now at SMUD. These lights will not be on without all the support of labor right now.
What I love, like I love those answers, right? Like when we're thinking about economic development in this region, like the union members are members of those communities, like they have that on the line as well, of just like, we want to develop this economy so that I can afford to live where I work. So thank you for your answer.
Perfect. Thank you for the question and the responses. As I mentioned earlier, this next set of presentations is going to have a little bit more of a regional focus. The work that we're doing at ILG is potentially scalable to a broader audience, but these are a little bit more localized projects that we're going to be talking about for the next few minutes. So first up, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren Meckles, who is the Workforce Development Program Officer with SETA.
Hi, thank you for having me. Lauren Meckles, Workforce Development Manager with SETA. SETA is unique in that we work with job seekers, employers, the community-based organizations, and our big focus today is to highlight some of the grants and the programs that we have to deliver around public sector employment. We have Aggie Square initiative coming up, and we have many partners that are involved in this work. Next slide. Thank you. Next slide. Perfect. So the Aggie Square Community Partnership is all about our partners. We have ILG as a big member, and we also have our community-based organizations. I see Jesus here with Asian Resources. So we have 4 community-based organizations that are funded through our WAF. We have a WAF Community Navigator project. We also have the Regional Equity and Recovery Program and upcoming High Road Training Partnership Grant that is going to facilitate the work involved in the community. We are assessing the community needs, conducting workforce needs assessments, and providing training and pipeline development leading to public sector jobs. The overall scope of our project is to start with the Community Navigator project. We have funded the 4 CBOs to hire the community navigators and to actually do the work out in the community, providing services, job seekers, employment and training and resources. And to build onto that, is this still working? Sorry, okay. And to build onto that, we have the Regional Equity and Recovery Program, where we're working with Los Rios, strengthening our partnerships with Los Rios and our education partners, identifying training programs that lead to quality public sector jobs. And with that grant, we have enrollment opportunities for customers to receive paid training. So it is an earn and learn model, where we will be working with customers and providing them opportunities to be in training, leading to high quality jobs. It is a multi-sector approach, so we don't have to just focus on necessarily city, local government, state jobs. We can also work with our private industry partners. Next is we have our High Road Training Partnership Grant. It does not start until April 2024. I know a lot of people are most excited about this grant because there's a lot of work that is going to go into working with our partners and bringing in our stakeholders to plan out where the opportunities lie within UC Davis, within state and local government. We have these meetings happening every week, to say the least. And we are meeting with our partners, trying to identify where are the opportunities and jobs and where's the job training that can come from that. Part of the Workforce Navigator program is to train our community navigators and to provide them training on workforce development. We created a website and a toolkit for them to be able to utilize and to get the information out to customers. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Sorry.
I am going to suggest we hold questions until the end of all the presentations again, just because we've got a lot to get through and we want to make sure that we can share all of that with you. So I'm going to turn it over next to Jose Bodipo Memba, who is the Chief Diversity Officer at SMUD.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And again, thanks, Erica, for your leadership in this space. I hope you guys can hear me okay. I'll be the first to admit, Jacob, Tegan, if you guys can raise your hands here in the room, they're the ones who do the real work. I just get to talk about it. Oh, and Jennifer in the back as well. But it's really important. I'm happy that they're here. And we can go to the next slide, please. When looking at SMUD's regional workforce strategy, it's important that we've made a pivot, that we really are focusing on workforce, not just for those 2,300 employees that we have at SMUD, but really looking at us as an economic engine for the region. And this team literally has been developed to do that work and have been doing it very well. I want to highlight some of the great programs they have in place. Next slide. So what's our why? It's important when you take a look at this vision here. This is SMUD's vision as an organization. We are an electric utility, but you can see the vision is about being a powerful partner for an inclusive zero carbon economy. That vision is how and why we do the work. We recognize the fact that if we are not inclusive or diverse or focused on the environmental health of all of our customers that we serve as a public utility, we can't survive as a region. And then all you got to do is take a look at the Brookings research. Almost everybody in this room has already been on point with that. Thank you, Renee, and your team for helping drive that work. We see the intersectionality of workforce development in our overall quality of life. Next slide. So what's the strategy about? And I'm going to try to see if I can read this in really small font because my eyes are bad. But really it's how do we, I'm just going to turn around. How can we address the growing need for skilled labor to meet SMUD and the region? Because as we look at this zero carbon economy, we talked about the governor's goals. SMUD has a 2030 zero carbon goal itself. There are a number of jobs, and you can see spread here on the screen, a number of areas where we have a workforce deficiency and in terms of numbers. And we need to find ways to address those. So we want to make sure we're attracting that talent and retaining that talent. We want to make sure that we're working with the folks in this room, in this region, and in this state to make sure that we're co-creating those equitable pathways, making sure it's clear, making sure that folks know where the opportunities are, the skills that they need, and know where the jobs are. So there's not a disconnect in that space. Easier said than done. We want to make sure that the region's aligned. And that's what's so exciting about this conversation is that a lot of the groups here, including those here at the table, we've been working together to try to figure out how to solve this problem. But I have here in red is that it's really important that we address the barriers to entry and we don't sweep those under the rug. That we understand if there's specific gaps in specific demographics, whether it be gender, race, geographics, demographics, that we identify those barriers and try to come up with solutions. That's a key component of our strategy. And then last is making sure that we're leveraging data and metrics to track how successful we are. Next slide. So 4 key areas. We want to make sure that we're training the workforce. We want to make sure that we're providing access to livable wages. We want to make sure that community partnerships are a key component, that we aren't doing this by ourselves. And then last but not least, we want to make sure that the skills that we know that we need are aligned. If we know that we need folks who are great analytical thinkers, folks who have great technical acumen, that the region understands what it takes to cover that gap, that our schools, that our workforce training programs have that information up front. So we're setting people up for success. Success for us is making sure we have a great talent base, not just for SMUD, because we know that the skills we have are aligned with the city of Sacramento, with the county, with PG&E. We want to make sure that we're producing a great regional economy across the board. Next slide. So how are we going to do it? Next slide. There we go. This is a cool graphic. You have to click all of them real quick. Number 2, number 3, number 4. Kudos to the team for putting this together. 4 steps. 1 is really focusing on awareness, making sure folks are aware of the opportunities, having straight talk about real jobs. What are the barriers? What are the access points? What are the skills needed? And making sure folks understand how much money can you make? Do you need to pass a drug test to do this job? Do you need to be able to have a Class A license? Having real conversation right now. Number 2, making sure that there's real entry-level skill building, and that's working. SETA has been a great partner as part of that process to make sure folks are ready at the entry level. Number 3, making sure advanced learning certifications are in place and that there's pathways from steps 1 and 2 to those opportunities, and making sure they're aware and aligned with the job opportunities, because area number 4 is making sure folks are getting hired. None of this works if the folks are not landing in jobs and being successful and put in position to be successful in those jobs. Next slide. So this is what we call affectionately the Candyland slide. Again, Jacob gets credit for this because it really does show. It's our first attempt to really draw the real pathways to the opportunities. And it really tells us what we're doing in each space. So in phase 1, that outreach space and awareness space, right now, we're reaching out to about 32,000 of our young people, letting folks know about the opportunities that exist through bringing folks to our campus, through student outreach, through online training, through partnerships. Number 2, I'm calling it 2A, is we're working with folks in this room who already are experts at workforce development, entry-level training, and making sure we're connecting them with the populations that we're reaching out to. We have more resources to reach out to customers, so let's leverage that to help nonprofits and training spaces. Number 3, make sure that we are reaching out to advanced certification locations and making sure they're connected. The curriculums are connected at the junior college, community college. And then lastly, making sure folks are aware of the direct jobs of SMUD and the over $100 million of contracting work that we do at SMUD each year, that those contractors know where this talent is and can connect to it and that we make sure there's opportunities in our contract language that require folks to do that outreach. And then lastly, making sure that the other industry partners that we have influence over are at the table. I'm going to go ahead and skip, if that's okay, because I want to be respectful of time. So we can go to the next slide. Go to the next slide, please. Go to the next slide, please. I want to stop right here and just highlight some of the partnerships that we have in place. It's important, if you take a look on the left side of the slide, that we set an internal goal, what we call our 3,000, 1,000. We want to train 3,000 people through SMUD and through our partnerships. And we want to make sure that 1,000 of those at least are getting hired. The team's done such a great job thus far. We've already reached the 3,000 trained. We've got about 400 folks that have been hired, but we needed to do more. And we're also identifying gaps to make sure that those folks who are hired stay employed. And we're recognizing the need for case management, the need for support, wraparound services. That's one of the key goals. The last thing I'll highlight is that we've done a couple of programs, and I don't need a slide to highlight this because I want to make sure there's time for us to have conversation, is in the recruitment is doing really targeted events to get folks exposed. So we did a women in trades event where we brought women to our training facility, and they had an entire day to learn and see and experience the job opportunities that exist, and also get trained on how to apply, and also had other vendors that offered additional training on site to prepare folks for those opportunities. We're doing more of that. Tegan's done an amazing job of doing a workforce development strategy summit series that we started this year, where we're bringing our partners so they know what they need to be able to align with SMUD. We've been doing great programs. Jacob has been doing this before this was cool 5 years ago with the Urban League, doing hands-on training in electrification. We're trying to put our money where our mouth is, and we're actually trying to get even more and leveraging our space to bring dollars into the region. And that's why SURF and other grant proposals are really important, and SMUD wants to take a really proactive role in making sure that we can bring those dollars here. So there's much more, and I left those in the slides for folks if they want to take a look at that. But I just want to give a high level of what SMUD is trying to do right now and hopefully continue to advance in the future. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Just a quick note, since we have been going through so much content very quickly, we have all the slides. We can share out resources with you all after today. So just because we skipped it here doesn't mean you can't take a look at it after today's session. So we are doing actually good on time. We've cut back up a little bit. So if there is any questions, maybe one question or two questions for Lauren or Jose before we keep moving. I don't want you to lose your question as we keep going. Any?
One of my old hats. So I had 15 years at Job Corps, and I'm just curious, have you connected with Job Corps in these training? Because they will change, and they can change their training to exactly what you need. That's my other, I'm a big fan of Job Corps, only because I was there for a very long time. So I was just curious.
Short answer is yes. So Job Corps, so one thing I kind of went over a little fast. One of the things that SMUD has done is formally through our Sustainable Communities Partnerships program, we've identified 130 nonprofit partners. We have multi-year partnerships in place. Over 50 of those are focused on nonprofits. Job Corps is one of those. And Tegan has been really a champion with Job Corps. There's been a lot of improvements at Job Corps that really are aligned right now. So definitely one of the, I guess, the best practices I would say for agencies, it's great to write a check, but it's better to actually engage in real partnership and understand ways in which you can bridge those gaps. And that's what we've been able to do with the Sustainable Communities Partnership. And I'd be remiss, and Erica won't say this, but Erica was a key component in helping design that program as a part of our process when she was at SMUD. So again, she's been doing this work for quite a while as well.
Perfect. Any other questions? Do we have any questions in the virtual room? Okay. Well, we can keep moving then. Next up, I'm going to turn it over to Joseph Preciado, who is the project director with Los Rios ARC.
Thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm really here to talk to you a little bit about and a lot of the same vein that our other presenters have talked about, of kind of putting our theory into action and looking at how we can connect our workforce system and what we're doing, at least from a community college perspective, to be able to support this work make greater connections in this space, and really to serve, to create these pipelines, right, for the job opportunities that we see. We saw the data earlier in Erica's presentation. Likewise, we're gonna, as a preview, or well, I won't preview it here, but I'll just drop this hint in there, and that I've been working with Dr. Ebony Benzing from the Centers of Excellence to help us generate and get a better sense of what certain labor markets look like in our region, specifically what that looks like for individual job classifications and kind of and and then validating some of that data. So that's something that we're in the process of actively looking at and creating, and then we'll reach out and make some of those connections, because we want to learn more about, does this data resonate with employers? Does it make sense based on what we're trying to do? And then, kind of doing this iterative work in terms of improving everything that we're doing along the way. So what you'll see, next slide, please. What you'll see in these next few slides. So by the way, I'm using my own campus's template, but really, so I'm based at American River College, but the Los Rios Community College District has 4 main campuses throughout the region. And so I want to make just that very clear, that this is really a district-wide initiative. So and what I mean by that, and some of what you see behind me, is that, really this is a consortium-based grant that we received from the U.S. Department of Labor. And when I say consortium, like I said, I mean the 4 community colleges: American River, Cosumnes River, Folsom Lake, and Cosumnes River College. So together, and really as a 4-college district, what we did is to put together a proposal and looking at entry-level positions and classifications for public sector careers, and really saying, okay, well, what programs do we have in place currently, and to serve that population, and then what do we need to do to change or pivot or rethink and revise? So we've done a lot of this, by the way, I should say, this is a 4-year, $5 million project. We are about a little bit halfway through that 4-year period. So it was awarded in early 2021, and then will sunset at the end of January 2025. Like I said, we're part of the first cohort of grantees of this U.S. Department of Labor Sustaining Community Colleges training grant. There have been 3 cohorts since then, and I think a 4th is on the way. But we were one of 11 grantees nationwide, and one of I think only one, or I think the only one, working on public sector jobs and access and career pathways. So next slide, please. If I were to, and you can see as I'm talking about the consortium grant, what you see here is the service region for the Los Rios Community College District is vast. So, this is not necessarily a project that we're working on exclusively in Sacramento County. It really does we are looking kind of broadly, how can we serve our region? Which I think is really critical, because and when you start to dig into that, we realize that the needs of someone who may be in the far eastern part of our region may look very different from those in South Sacramento, in the city, and in surrounding parts. So again, it's a very I think there's a lot of complex work that's gone into looking at what are the needs of our community and how do we serve them with these job opportunities. So making some of those really critical and necessary connections between the vis-a-vis this grant, between the internal stakeholders that we have within Los Rios, and looking at what we can do to pivot, change, curriculum wise, programming wise, and then also who are the external stakeholders in our workforce ecosystem, right? So looking at employers, looking at union. We had a question earlier about kind of union involvement, and what does that mean, and what does that look like for kind of looking at minimum qualifications for jobs. Soliciting input. I think building trust is a really critical piece of this work that we've been doing, because folks want to know, okay, so who are you, and can we work with you, and what does this look like? Yeah, we realize that you have this vested interest during the life of this grant, but what does that mean once that grant goes away? So we've done a lot of groundwork and working with folks to say, here, we're here to stay, and also this is the way this is how can we build some sustainability inputs into this project. Phase 2 and 3 is really where we're at right now, which is training folks. So actually getting folks into programs. We've done a ton of work, and I know some of our faculty here, kudos to our faculty who've done a tremendous job at being part of creating a regional advisory board, soliciting input from employers, and looking at kind of really getting into the weeds on what are the minimum qualifications, and do our academic programs meet those needs. because we don't want to necessarily, yes, it'd be great if we meet the minimum qualifications, but at the same time, we recognize that many of these entry-level jobs throughout our public sector are very competitive. There are thousands of applicants. How do we get folks not only the skills that they need to be minimally eligible, but to be competitive applicants in for those opportunities? And so again, our faculty has done tremendous work around not only retooling our curriculum, but looking at the ways in which we serve students in ways that make sense. So if we are targeting folks who may be underemployed, unemployed, have certain barriers to employment, how does that curriculum meet students where they're at in terms of flexible offerings, fully online programming, and all of that work has been done. So now we're in that phase where we're actually getting folks into these modified programs, or I should say existing programs that we had. Now they look different. How do we get folks trained in those programs? And then third, which is actually where it's right on our horizon, is getting folks and having those established career pathways with our employer partners to participate in paid work-based learning opportunities, internships, other ways that folks can get hands-on experience, so that, again, they are competitive applicants, not minimally eligible applicants. So big shout out to our partners at SETA, ILG, the state of California, and also a number of local counties. SMUD has actually been part of our regional advisory board as well. And looking at, again, how do we come together? We may not necessarily from a systemic perspective be especially within this short time frame of 4 years, change, let's say, collective bargaining agreements, or maybe not be able to change minimum qualifications for specific classifications, but recognizing that that's an opportunity, and how do we navigate within the existing system so that we can create real opportunities for folks in our community. So so that's where we're at now. And next slide. Thank you. I think part of this process, and I think this is a pretty short slide, but really I think what we're getting at here is kind of, we had to do some real, I think, important work inwards and looking inwards at ourselves in Los Rios and say, what do we have within our control? What are we doing well? And what are we not doing so well? Because I think that's been, I think, part of this process of establishing trust and building those connections, is to say, we recognize that, we do good work and we can do better. And here are the ways that we can. So like I said, we have addressed some of those elephants in the room, and Erica mentioned it earlier that there's these tropes that the public sector can be slow to react, and so again, being more proactive as best we can as opposed to reactive. Thanks. And I'll go to the next slide, please. So ways in which folks can be engaged, and this is kind of our call to action. How can you get involved? There are a number of different ways. This is just a sampling of ways that you can do that, but we host regional advisory boards twice a year. This is our opportunity to solicit feedback. You do some of that iterative programming and development that we were talking about, that I was talking about a minute ago. Offering those work-based learning opportunities, ideally paid, would be great. There's a ton of research out there that talks a lot about the importance of paid internships and work-based learning opportunities. So offering those and again, helping us to connect those to students that are in our programs. We have one of the other things that I have up here is participating or engaging in students with in our Handshake platform. This is an easy way to connect to literally tens of thousands of students across the Los Rios district for opportunities that you may have as an employer. So we can connect on that, and I'm happy to share more information about that as well. And we're going to be having some public sector career events. Linnea talked about that earlier, of having some of those those career events that are organized by cluster. We're definitely, that's on our horizon and what we plan to do in the near future. So yeah, I'll pause there. And then I think the last slide just has my contact information. So I'm happy to share more and engage and talk a little bit about how we can do this work together, because that's really, I think, the collaborative spirit of what we're trying to do in terms of systems change.
Do we have any quick questions for Joseph? Okay, well then last but definitely not least, I'll turn it back over to Erica to talk about another one of ILG's initiatives with the Workforce Accelerator Fund.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. And thanks to all of our panelists so far and our presenters. Hopefully you're seeing the sort of coordination that's taking and sort of the linkages here. You know, in this current panel, we've got utilities, which are a special district. We've got higher education. We've got the workforce board, our organization's a nonprofit. This ecosystem is diverse, but it's really, really important that we're all staying connected to one another. We're aligning with our efforts. We're aware of all the things that are happening, right? And there's so many activities that have some touch on each other, that it can be a little bit like community outreach. I think sometimes we're engaging the same people over and over again on different things, and we've got to figure out how to coordinate and how to align. And so I think part of the goal of this activity in this IPPS in general, and certainly this summit, is to make sure that you're aware of some of these really big initiatives that are taking place and how there might be some intersecting points, how there might be some opportunities for us to think differently, how there might be research we can share or ways we can leapfrog past some hurdles that we might have. So thinking differently and just being aware of the projects is key. The last project I'll share with you is about a project that ILG is working on tied to the Workforce Accelerator Fund, which is also a WIOA grant. And it's really aligned a little bit with the question that our person from the union mentioned was, you know, how are workers involved in this? How are the people involved in this, right? We always talk about employers and what employers need, but how are the people that are doing the work connected to this? And you've heard that there is a totally different way people are talking about this now. It is very much about how do we make sure that there are good jobs, well-paying jobs, that the quality of life is improved. It's not just about making a bottom line situation for the employer. It's really about building a more equitable community and a more, and honestly, it's an economic development strategy that is really human-centered. And so thinking about our program in the next slide, actually, I have a clicker. I will use it. The IDEA project is a project we were just awarded a grant for, which is improving diversity, equity, and access to local government jobs. Because of all the things we've heard for the last hour and a half, it's hard to get in, it's hard to stay in, and it's difficult sometimes even understand that it's there. And there's even, I mean, beyond the awareness issue of even wanting to join in local government, there's the access issue of getting in and then being able to stay there. We have some amazing partners in this project, and some of them are in the room today. Many of them are not, but we want to be grateful for the opportunity to not only look in the Sacramento region, but also statewide. So this project is actually intended to be a statewide model with a pilot that's regional that we can scale. So we love the opportunity to kind of look at what's being done across the state, but then also do some work within our region and then open it up, raise visibility across state, other agencies and local agencies in the state of California. So the big idea with IDEA is really diversity, equity, and access. The purpose is to help public sector employees develop solutions for hiring and retention, which you've heard before today. But we're going to make it easier for those underrepresented communities to learn about, compete for, and thrive in local government careers. So there's a lot of data out there about this, and it's a little bit disparate. And there's a lot of activities taking place, and that's also a little bit disparate, not always connected. And ILG's mission is to connect local governments, is to be an implementation hub for local governments. How can you do this on the ground? That's what we want to do. And so we want to work with regional local governments in Sacramento on pilots to help make these workplace and these hiring practices a little bit more accessible and inclusive of some of the historically underrepresented, potentially disadvantaged, underinvested communities across the region, with the intention of bringing that to a statewide audience and saying, hey, maybe you can do something similar. This worked for us. Could it work for you? Here's some strategies to consider. The key elements of our IDEA project, and there's a lot of them, but it starts with community insights. Where instead of starting with what does the employer need, we're actually going to start with the community and say, what do you want? What do you want in your workplace? What do you want in your workforce? What do you want in your employer? How do you want to show up? How do you want to be? What would make you feel like not only the recruitment was right for you, but also the job was right, the skill sets were right? So really a lot of what you're hearing today, we're starting here instead of ending there. And then we're going to bring in concurrently, we're going to try and find all the things that are taking place, kind of like we're doing here regionally. Statewide, we're collecting information about all of the workforce projects and programs that are working really well, things that you might be able to borrow, things you might be able to coordinate. Maybe there's a great partnership in another part of the state between a local government and either a special district, or maybe it's a higher education institution or a school district. What is working? Let's highlight that and showcase it in a library and resource hub that'll be online and accessible for free. We want to update the regional needs assessment we did in Sacramento in 2019, and we've referred to that today. We're going to do an updated one. We're going to connect with some of the work that's being done for the Department of Labor grant. The Centers of Excellence are partnering with us again. How can we update that regionally and then scale that statewide to make sure that labor market data is accurate? And then we're going to make sure that we have a pilot that we can test, something that we can model, right, for community outreach and for recruitment and for systems change, really thinking about the input, the inner workings of local government, which is unique. It's very different. It's a little bit sometimes siloed. How do we actually go about maybe changing some requirements for a job posting? How do we go about changing those MQs? What do you need to do to actually make this work, right? The state talked about how they're going through and assessing some of their classifications and their requirements. What does that look like if a local agency did it in the Sacramento region? And can we then do a toolkit or a how-to for other agencies to do it as well? We need to speed this process up so that we are not so slow, so that we can be competitive. And then we're going to build as a closing, a very ambitious closing part of the project is a best practices guidebook. Just a roadmap for you, how you might go through this process so you don't have to go through all the hiccups we did as we're working through it. That's why we're there, to speed through some of those roadblocks so that you don't have to. So you have an opportunity to join this project in a couple ways. Any one of these things, we are open to having partners in, whether you're in Sacramento or statewide. Any local agency or partner in this ecosystem is willing, and we are interested in having you. You can share your story about what has worked, what has not worked is equally important. You can participate in this pilot project. You can help us shape it. And then you can join the discussion. We're going to be having community-based organizations, this conversations and focus groups this fall. We'd love to have your input. We'd love to have your guidance. We'd love to have any insights you have about this, because this is really about all of us working together, collaborating and innovating. And we would love to have you be at the table with us. Thanks so much.
Okay. So what questions do you have? What has this sparked? Any comments or questions for the panel? Nobody everybody's shy today. What about online? Anybody online? Okay. Well, I have a question kind of related to Erica's slide here. How can we all work together? How can the attendees engage in your projects or in your any initiatives you have going on? Maybe we can just go down the line, and also would love to hear from Renee and Linnea. Or is there okay. So how can we engage? How can we work together?
Sure. I think in general, this is something that I've witnessed in my 30 years. Goodness, I'm aging myself. It's a continuum, and it's just a different, how can I say, our focus might be a little different. And we have to recognize what is the end result? What do we want? What is our goal? I feel like sometimes we all come in with all these different ideas, and the cross collaboration it never is a quality indicator to be measured. What does success look like for all of us? And if it's not the same, then we're not able to streamline the rest of it. So we have to start backwards, right? Start with our goal in mind and look at what does success look like for all of our different projects and things that we're working on and we're so passionate about, that we end up missing, I think, some of the little things that we can actually support each other in. So I guess for me, that's the first thing I would look at is, when someone looks at a project, how are they going to say that it was successful, and how we all can put our hands in it to make sure that we're doing the same thing.
We're happy to meet with our community members and to hear ideas about what they need. And that's part of what the Community Navigator Project is all about, is really listening to the community, where are the needs, and then working with our community-based organizations, our job centers, to be able to deliver services and provide resources and job training, employment. If we have industry that has a specific need and there's a certain type of training, we would love to come to the table with industry and really bat out, like, what are the ideas around developing short-term trainings? Earn and learn model is the priority. We are hearing from a lot of our customers that they are most interested in job training, paid job training, and working within the industry and moving up the ladder and participating in training while they're employed. We also are working with our community-based organizations through a collaborative. So if there are organizations or industry or business that would like to join our collaborative, feel free to reach out to us and we will bring you to the table for those conversations.
I think this is a really good question. And, you know, I think when we were thinking prior to coming to this event today and talking about, well, what specifically are we looking for from folks, either whether they're employers, whether they're from an education sector. And I mean, I've got certainly, like I said, we've got a grant, and anybody who's ever worked on a grant project, you know, that you have very specific outcomes and metrics that you have to meet. So I've got a whole list that I can go through with you and talk to you about. But I think the point of mentioning that is that we recognize, I think, as part of this project, that there are different levels of engagement that employers are either going to be willing or able to participate in. And so kind of similar to what Lauren mentioned here is just now, is that certainly get in contact with me and we can talk about the different ways in which you can engage. At the same time, you know, I almost think of this as this particular grant project that I'm working on is one, kind of seeing this field of dots. I've got a 4-year-old, and so like we do a lot of connect the dots. So so forgive me for using that example, but I think it's important within our workforce ecosystem, right? Is that we all know who our connections are amongst our group, but we may not know, you know, who our connections are from the person that's sitting next to me, and having those conversations around, okay, well, how can we connect the dots in ways that are meaningful and that have this impact is really important, and in a way that works for you and or your organization. So I think it's about kind of engaging at those various levels and kind of altitudes and see what makes sense.
No, it's a great question. I would echo everybody else's comments. I guess the question I would ask of this group is to do an assessment of your existing organization and really take a close look at what is it that you do and do well. I think during these times, there's kind of a scarcity mindset that exists in our region where we're all trying to do everything. And sometimes once we know what we do and what we can deliver, like SMUD has basically said, we're an electric utility, and we're a pretty good convener. So we can help people in our field, and we can convene, and we can leverage some of the community funding that we have to help be the engine behind other organizations. But then for us to do that effectively, we need to know what you do, so that when you saw that Candyland chart, that we know kind of where we can best leverage your abilities. So that would be, I guess, my recommendation is, one, reach out to Tegan and Jacob and Jennifer, let them know that you're interested, but then understand what it is that you want to bring to this ecosystem. Because as Erica said, there's a number of spaces where we need help collectively. And what's exciting about this whole collaborative is that if we are all able to work fairly well together, we can do something that hasn't been done before. And back to the Brookings piece, if we're able to build that workforce talent base, it will have huge economic development benefits that will change people's lives and change their health and change their life expectancy. So like, that's the game that we're trying to win when it's all said and done.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jose. And I just have one thing to add, only because we've been talking a lot about the local governments and the public sector that we know now. But what we haven't really been thinking about, or maybe I do, to me, I'll start thinking about, is what is coming. We're thinking about, I mean, we're talking to 8th graders and 9th graders about jobs that don't even exist yet, right? We have to think differently. And I think the private sector has been doing a great job of that for a long time, especially in high tech. And part of the reason why public sector isn't as competitive is because we're living in the now sometimes and not living in what is going to be the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so when you think about whether it's clean and green jobs, or whether it's IT and cybersecurity, it's things we don't even know exist. Those will all be AI. Those are all going to play a role in the public sector. So we've got to think differently, not only about the roles that we have now, but what the roles are going to be moving forward. And I'm so excited that so many of you are already doing that. So many of you are starting to think that way. But as you're moving into what can I do? How can I connect? Also just turn the brain into a different kind of a visionary mode and go, what does the world look like 5 years from now? What kind of training am I even going to need to do my job moving forward? It's totally going to change. And I think that is an exciting place that we are. And to the point that they all made on already, we're in an exciting time, and there's an opportunity for us to work together to do some really amazing things.
I know we have a couple of questions, but Renee, I also want to give you a chance if there's anything you want to share from the Valley Vision perspective on how the attendees can engage with you all and your projects before we take those.
You know, I think we shared information earlier, and I want to make sure we get to the questions for the online audience. So I'm going to give it over to D'Angelo here.
Perfect. So first question from the City of San Jose HR, what kind of metric do you all use to measure impact on these initiatives?
Employment outcomes. We have some big goals to train hundreds of community members and provide employment opportunities. So employment is the main outcome. Keep taking yours for sharing.
Yeah. And again, we are tracking number of individuals employed, where those folks are coming from. So zip codes, demographics, number of folks trained, same information in terms of demographics. We're also looking at the economic development outcomes related to that. So we've been working with GSEC and others and how we can measure that as well. And then we're also looking at the outreach, the touches, how many people that we're getting information in front of, so we can figure out whether all of that information sharing that we've talked about is correlating into engagement into the programs. And I say that we're looking at indirect and direct impact. So we're looking at folks who are working with SMUD, but also looking at our folks working with our partners, and because to us it's a collective one, but we're tracking that information to determine our success rates. And then we'll probably tweak that, because to Erica's point, as things change, the measures may need to change as well.
And I'll just add one more thing to the things that we've already heard. Yes, and to all of that. The other thing we're starting to do is look a little bit more at within the system. Once the hiring has taken place, what is the success? What are the qualitative and some of the quantitative measurements around people? Are they staying in the jobs? What's their satisfaction like? Do they feel like there is a belonging component to their workplace, right? So as we start to bring in more diverse people into the workforce, and certainly the public sector workforce, that's going to be a seismic shift in the way that the agencies themselves have operated, what those agencies look like, how they might operate, right? And so we need to make sure that we're bringing people in and also making it a safe space for them to stay in and feel comfortable and feel like they belong. And so we're working with some data partners and some tech partners to try and track that kind of satisfaction as well. So especially with our apprenticeships program, once they're in and they're doing their project, how are they feeling? How are they doing? Are they able to stay into the role once they've gotten that role? And are they really are they going to have that career mobility once they get in the position? So those are all things we're tracking, and as well as earnings and the increase in earnings potential, and that increase in earnings, to make sure that we're addressing the economic mobility concept.
Next question is from Scoey. SMUD addressed this by wondering how SETA, ILG, ARC will work with the high schools to increase student interest in the public sector workforce. Aggie Square to learn about public sector careers, to obtain a work-based learning experiences, dual enrollment, pre-apprenticeships, or youth apprenticeships.
We do currently have programming around some of this work. A good example is our mental behavioral health initiative. We have funding set aside for youth 18 to 24. And we've been very successful in working with Los Rios on developing an apprenticeship program that aligns with the work-based learning. So we recruit students, we provide work readiness, work-based learning opportunities, and then we align it with the apprenticeship program, leading to full-time paid jobs. We have a lot of really positive outcomes from that program, so we want to do more of that. And we have a high road training partnership grant in partnership. Well, we're a partner with SCOE in order to build that pipeline with mental behavioral health.
Yeah, I was just going to add, from a Los Rios perspective, we each of our 4 campuses are serving and have kind of active relationships with high schools, and I would also add one of our other partners is the CAERC, which is the Capital Adult Ed Regional Consortium. So these are adult ed sites throughout our region that are also connected to some of our K-12 programs. And again, I think it's really important that we look at, all of the different ways in which we can, community-based organizations, Asian Resource Center, La Familia Center, Greater Sacramento Urban League. These are ways in which we can develop some of these pipelines for these programs, and really to get the word out, to let folks know, hey, like here's this opportunity. But I think Erica mentioned this earlier, right? Is that narrative around what it means to work in the public sector. It may not necessarily be kind of a quote unquote kind of sexy entry point. So it's like, so what does it mean? And what are we offering and how are we offering it in a way that resonates with folks? And that's not always an easy thing to do. So I think that's part of our outreach effort, and what we're trying to do is to get the word out, but also in a way that resonates and makes sense.
Awesome. I just have one addition to that, and it's just that we agree wholeheartedly. The school districts, especially at the high school level, are critical for our work. We see this across the state that once you're in college, sometimes you've already been required, especially if you're having to declare before you even apply for college. You're required to declare a major, and that major may or may not be something that you naturally see as a public sector fit. Granted, there probably is a space, but people aren't thinking that way, and maybe they don't have their mindset built into it. So we're trying to start early. And I think the K-12 school districts are incredible partners in this. We've done work with the Innovative Pathways to Public Service on Careers in Government Days. We've had multiple programs, and there's some slides on here that will show you with some stats on how many students we've reached just in the Sacramento region. We got a grant at ILG last year to do a program called Summer Jam. It was a grant from the city of Sacramento, where we literally brought students living in the city of Sacramento, high school age, to show them what local government was. And we gave them over the summer a virtual and hybrid experience and an in-person experience with what local government means to them and how it can connect to them. And that's the kind of thing that makes this real. I mean, just talking about government and talking about the public sector doesn't do it, but showing them what that means and how that impacts their everyday life and how they can make that difference, so that it's a mission-based approach to the workforce, is really key. And we would love to do more of that. And we have a toolkit on how to engage youth. And there's a number of programs that we've worked on around youth engagement that really do lead into the leadership component of the public sector. One thing you saw when you guys did your Mentimeter, right? You're having not as hard of a time on the entry level, but it's that management and that journey level that's hard. It's these career pathways, and you've got to get people to picture themselves in the public sector across the spectrum so that they can be our future leaders. And so we love that. We want to do that. And we have been doing it for, I guess ILG is 65 years old now. So we've been doing it for a while, but we want to keep doing it. And we absolutely love working with schools to do it.
Erica, one thing I wanted to add, and going back to collaboration, there's the K-16 collaborative for the Sacramento region. Again, $80 million over the next 5 years focused on getting K through 16 programs aligned with careers, particularly in the engineering space and the medical space. So again, how do we leverage existing collaboratives? Every school district in this region is a part of that process. So how do we connect these processes together? And that's one of the things we're trying to do, is weave that web, like you mentioned before. So that's one great avenue for folks in this region to ensure that we're diving in deep if you don't have the resources yourself to do some of that K through 12 or K through 16 outreach.
Perfect. I know we're getting really close on time, so I want to keep us moving, but I know all of the panelists would be more than happy to connect offline, answer additional questions. And that's the theme I'm hearing through all of this, is networking, partnerships, collaboration. How can we work together? So I'm sure this is the first of many conversations, but I will turn it back over to Erica to take us through this home stretch here.
And it's just a really quick one. We have been talking a lot, but we know you may have some things to share. And so we don't have a ton of time, but if you do have something to share about an event or an activity that aligns with this work that we should know, if you're on the Zoom, put it in the chat, put a link in there, drop in information that we can all see. We'll make sure to save that and share that. And if you are in this room and have something you want to share with this group, just to make sure they know what you're working on, how this might collaborate, now is a great time. Seeing no hands, no pressure. Oh, we do have one.
Oh, hello, everyone. My name is Jesus, and I'm the site director at Asian Resource Job Center. Just wanted to share that we're having a job fair on October 13th at our headquarters location with the state, in collaboration with the state, from 10 to 2. So a lot of public sector jobs will be available at that job fair, and I'd be more than glad to have everyone there. Anyone who's interested go and attend that event. Thank you.
Thank you. This isn't a one-time opportunity. What we will continue to do is, now that you're at this event, and hopefully you will continue to stay connected with us, we'll be able to share out information about the various activities in the IPPS newsletter. We do send out all the regional calendar items of things that are actively taking place within our 6-county region, and that is one example. And then if you're on the ILG newsletter, you'll see the statewide work with the workforce development activities. So as I mentioned, this is how you can take action. Knowing that IPPS is active, we have this regional advisory body. We are working on career pathways and workforce events like the Youth and Government Days that we talked about. We're doing statewide and regional research related to this sector, and we're focusing on systems change, sector growth, and workplace innovation. So if you're not actively engaged personally, or you know of somebody in your organization that should also join in, the more the merrier. These organizations in the public sector are large, so one representative isn't necessarily going to represent your whole organization. Feel free to bring a friend. Feel free to connect the dots across your agency to make sure that we're really looking holistically at what you have. So this again is the QR code for how to connect to IPPS. And if you do that, we will then connect you to all of these things, as well as all of these presentations and all of these amazing people who have talked about projects that are already underway and ways for you to collaborate and align. We would love to make sure that we at least can connect you all and make sure that you can share out and receive back information that you might be interested in. And I just want to thank, on behalf of ILG and certainly on behalf of IPPS, all of the presenters and partners that we had today, an amazing group of people that have just been doing a phenomenal work. Can we give everybody just a round of applause, please? And then, of course, I want to again thank our venue host and co-sponsor. Thank you to Sac State Downtown Campus. And Maria is there. We didn't get to talk about her, but she has been phenomenal, as well as the Downtown Campus team. We are so grateful to be here in this amazing space and to be in person, which is a complicating thing now. And I just want to give another shout out to our partners at Valley Vision for helping us with the high tech components of this and the hybrid. The Valley Vision team is amazing. Gustavo, D'Angelo, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then, as you all saw, Evan was here as well as Renee, amazing teams. And then the ILG team has been helping as well with all of the coordination for the event. So without further ado, we want to thank you all for joining us, and we do appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your afternoon.